Hurt, but don't stop. She gasped. The rancher's touch marked her soul. Emily had never imagined that her life would take such a sharp turn. Just a few months ago, she had been living in the busy city, surrounded by the constant noise of traffic and the glow of neon lights that never seemed to sleep. Every day had been a blur of work, coffee, and the stress of deadlines. But something inside her had grown restless, a quiet voice urging her to seek more than the concrete walls and endless noise. She wanted freedom, space, and a life that felt alive in a way the city could never give her. The opportunity came unexpectedly. She had stumbled across a small advertisement about a ranch looking for help. At first, she laughed at the idea. A ranch, handling animals, working with land and livestock seemed like a world away from the office cubicles she had known. But the more she thought about it, the more she realized that this was the chance she had been waiting for, a chance to start fresh, to challenge herself, and to discover something new about life and herself. Packing her belongings felt symbolic, like shedding one life and stepping into another. She left behind the tiny apartment that had been hers for years, leaving the city and its chaos behind. The drive to the ranch was long and quiet, passing through winding roads lined with trees, fields stretching endlessly, and the occasional farmhouse that seemed like a storybook scene from another time. With each mile, Emily felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. She wondered if she was truly ready for this adventure, and yet she knew she had no choice but to embrace it. When she finally arrived at the ranch, she was struck by its vastness. It was bigger than she had imagined, with sprawling fields, wooden fences that curved around grazing lands, and barns that smelled faintly of hay and animals. The sun was beginning to set, casting a golden light over the land, and Emily felt a sense of awe. This was not just a place to work. It was a world of its own, alive with its own rhythm and life. It was then that she met Daniel, the rancher. He was a man of quiet strength, tall and broad-shouldered, with a presence that seemed to command the land itself. His hands were rough, evidence of years of work, and his eyes carried a depth of experience and calm assurance. Daniel greeted Emily with a nod and a brief smile, his voice low but steady as he welcomed her. There was no pretense, no unnecessary words, just a sense of reliability and knowledge that made Emily feel both nervous and intrigued. The first days at the ranch were a challenge unlike anything Emily had faced. She had imagined hard work, but the reality was far more demanding than she had expected. The sun rose early, and by the time it climbed high in the sky, she was already drenched in sweat from feeding animals, mending fences, and learning to ride horses. Every task required attention, patience, and sometimes brute strength. At first, Emily stumbled often. She struggled to lift heavy bales of hay, her hands blistered, and she often found herself out of breath from running after the animals. But Daniel was always nearby, observing quietly, offering guidance when necessary, but never doing the work for her. There was a rhythm to the ranch that Emily slowly began to understand. Mornings were for feeding and checking on the livestock. Afternoons were for repairing fences, cleaning stables, and tending to the land. Evenings, when the work was done, were quiet and reflective, with the sound of the wind through the trees and the occasional call of a bird or the distant lowing of cattle. Emily began to notice how alive she felt in this world, how different it was to engage fully with something tangible and real. She had spent so long in a city where work was abstract and disconnected from the world around her. Here, every task had meaning, and every success, no matter how small, brought satisfaction. Emily also began to see layers of Daniel that she had not anticipated. He was not just a man of work, he was a teacher in his own way. He demonstrated patience, explaining how to handle the horses gently, how to read the mood of the animals, and how to anticipate problems before they became serious. He never raised his voice unnecessarily, but there was a firmness in his instructions that demanded attention. Emily found herself both intimidated and inspired by him. She realized that she respected his experience and wanted to learn everything she could from him. Despite the physical exhaustion, Emily found herself waking each morning with a sense of purpose she had never known. She remembered the city life she had left behind, where each day felt repetitive and drained of meaning. Here, she was learning, growing, and being tested in ways that forced her to confront her own limits. She fell into a rhythm, her body and mind adjusting to the demands of the ranch. She began to take pride in small achievements, successfully guiding a stubborn horse into its stable, mending a broken fence without help, or calming a nervous calf. Each success felt like a step toward becoming someone stronger and more capable. There were moments of doubt, of course. Emily often questioned whether she was strong enough to keep up, whether she truly belonged in this rough, demanding environment. She felt sore, tired, and sometimes overwhelmed. Yet, every time she considered giving up, she remembered the reason she had come: to challenge herself, to break free from a life of monotony, and to discover her own resilience. Each day, she repeated silently to herself that she could endure, that she could grow, that she could keep going. One particular morning stood out to her. She was tasked with helping move cattle through a narrow passage, a job that required both strength and precision. A young calf became frightened and tried to run in the wrong direction. Emily's first instinct was to panic, but she remembered Daniel's instructions and took a deep breath. Slowly and steadily, she guided the calf back with calm but firm gestures. Daniel watched silently, and when the calf finally moved in the right direction, he nodded with a quiet approval that made Emily's chest swell with pride. It was a small victory, but in that moment, she realized that she was capable of far more than she had ever imagined. Evenings at the ranch had their own magic. After long, tiring days, Emily would sit on the porch of the ranch house, watching the sun dip below the horizon, painting the sky with shades of orange, pink, and gold. She felt a peace she had never known in the city, a sense of connection to the land and the life she was building. Daniel would sometimes join her, sitting silently beside her, offering no words but a presence that felt steady and reassuring. In those moments, Emily began to understand that life was about more than work or success. It was about connection, trust, and learning from those around her. As days turned into weeks, Emily found herself growing in ways she hadn't anticipated. Her body was stronger, her mind sharper, and her spirit more resilient. She began to take pride not just in the work she accomplished, but in the lessons she learned from each challenge. Daniel's mentorship became a guiding force, shaping how she approached problems and encouraging her to push past her comfort zones. The ranch was no longer just a place to work. It had become a place of transformation, a world that demanded her best and, in return, offered growth and discovery. Emily still remembered her initial fears, her doubts about whether she could handle this life. But now, as she walked across the open fields, feeling the sun on her skin and the wind in her hair, she understood that she was exactly where she was meant to be. She had discovered a strength she never knew she possessed, and a resilience that would carry her through any challenge. The ranch, with its endless skies and open land, had marked the beginning of a new chapter in her life, one filled with hard work, growth, and the quiet satisfaction of a life lived fully and with purpose. And as she prepared for the next day, knowing that it would bring new tasks, new lessons, and new challenges, Emily felt ready. She knew that life on the ranch would not be easy, but she also knew that she had the strength, determination, and courage to meet it head-on. This was only the beginning, and she was determined to embrace every moment of it. The days at the ranch continued to test Emily in ways she had not expected. The initial excitement she had felt when she first arrived had been replaced by a steady rhythm of hard work, exhaustion, and small victories. Each morning, she woke before the sun, the crisp air filling her lungs as she prepared herself for another day. Her muscles ached, Her hands were rough and blistered, but Emily refused to let the discomfort stop her. She reminded herself silently, she had chosen this life and she would meet every challenge with courage. One of the first lessons Emily truly learned was the patience required to work with animals. The horses, in particular, were unpredictable and sometimes stubborn. On her first attempt at riding, a young horse named Daisy had bucked and refused to move forward, sending Emily tumbling into the soft dirt. She had been embarrassed and frustrated, thinking she was failing. But Daniel's calm presence and quiet instruction changed her perspective. He guided her gently, showing her how to read Daisy's movements, how to anticipate her reactions, and how to earn her trust. Slowly, Emily learned that success on the ranch was not about force or speed. It was about observation, understanding, and persistence. Every day brought a new challenge. Some mornings, she worked to repair broken fences damaged by storms or animals. Other days, she helped Daniel check the health of the cattle, walking for miles under the hot sun while carrying heavy equipment. Emily often found herself physically exhausted, and more than once she considered giving up. Yet every time she felt like quitting, she remembered the feeling of accomplishment that came after finishing even the smallest task. It was a satisfaction she had never known in the city, a proof that she was growing stronger, capable of enduring hardships she had once thought impossible. Emily's relationship with Daniel deepened during these days. He never demanded more than she could handle, but he quietly pushed her limits. Sometimes, he would watch from a distance as she struggled with a task, nodding when she found the solution on her own. At other times, he stepped in with precise instructions, demonstrating a technique before letting her try again. Emily respected him more than ever, realizing that his guidance was not about control, but about teaching her to trust herself. She began to admire his knowledge, patience, and the quiet confidence with which he handled the challenges of ranch life. The hardest moments came during the unpredictable events on the ranch. One afternoon, a sudden thunderstorm rolled across the fields. The wind howled, rain poured down in heavy sheets, and the cattle grew restless. Emily was tasked with securing the animals and making sure they stayed calm, but the chaos tested her nerves. One frightened cow broke away from the herd, running toward a broken fence. Emily's heart raced as she chased after it, slipping in the mud and nearly falling. But she remembered Daniel's words, "Stay calm, think clearly, and act with purpose." Slowly, carefully, she guided the cow back to safety, drenched and shaking but triumphant. That day, she learned a lesson she would never forget. Courage was not the absence of fear, but the decision to act despite it. Not all challenges were physical. Emily also faced emotional struggles. Working so closely with animals and being far from home made her feel isolated at times. She missed her family and friends, the comfort of familiar streets and routines. There were moments when doubt crept in, questions about whether she truly belonged in this harsh, demanding environment. During those times, she would sit quietly in the barn after a long day, listening to the soft sounds of the ranch and remind herself of why she had come. She had chosen this life to discover her strength, and she would not let fear or loneliness stop her from achieving it. One particular task highlighted both her struggles and her growth. Daniel asked her to help move a group of cattle through a narrow passage to a new field. It was a tricky job, requiring coordination, calmness, and courage. Emily had never felt more nervous. As the cattle began to move, one of the younger cows panicked, running in the wrong direction and causing a small stampede. Emily's first instinct was to freeze, unsure of how to respond. But then she remembered Daniel's guidance and took a deep breath. She stayed calm, positioned herself carefully, and slowly guided the frightened cow back into line. Her heart pounded, her arms ached, and her clothes were soaked with sweat, but she succeeded. When Daniel nodded at her afterward, that quiet, approving look filled Emily with a sense of pride she had never known. She realized that her hard work and perseverance were not just shaping her skills, they were shaping her character. Despite the exhaustion, Emily found moments of unexpected joy. Early mornings when the sun rose over the fields brought a sense of peace and wonder. The soft light glimmered on the fences, the animals grazed quietly, and the world seemed still, even as the work began. She learned to appreciate the small victories, a horse finally responding to her commands, a fence repaired without issue, or a calf calm after a long struggle. These moments reminded her why she had come, why she had chosen this life, and why every challenge was worth enduring. Emily's connection with Daniel grew slowly, marked by trust and mutual respect. He shared stories of the ranch, tales of past hardships, and lessons learned over decades of work. Emily listened intently, absorbing not only his knowledge, but also his perspective on life, how resilience, patience, and understanding could overcome obstacles far greater than any physical challenge. Sometimes Daniel would remain silent, simply observing her progress, and Emily learned that silence could be as instructive as words. She began to notice the small ways he acknowledged her effort, a nod, a quiet smile, a gesture of approval. These moments encouraged her, strengthened her resolve, and deepened her admiration for him. As weeks passed, Emily noticed changes in herself. Her body grew stronger, her endurance improved, and her confidence blossomed. She no longer feared the long days or heavy work, she embraced them. She had learned to read the signs of the animals, anticipate challenges, and act decisively. But beyond the physical growth, Emily felt a transformation inside her. She had discovered a resilience she never knew she possessed, a courage that allowed her to face fear and uncertainty with determination. She had learned to trust her instincts, to rely on her own judgment, and to persevere even when the odds seemed against her. One evening, after a particularly long and tiring day, Emily sat on a small hill overlooking the ranch. The sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and gold. The field stretched endlessly, alive with the sounds of nature, and the cool wind brushed against her face. She reflected on her journey so far, the struggles, the lessons, the moments of doubt, and the triumphs. She realized that she had grown in ways she had never imagined possible. The ranch had tested her, pushed her to her limits, and shown her what she was truly capable of. Even in moments of quiet reflection, Emily understood that this was only the beginning. The challenges she had faced were a glimpse of what lay ahead, and she was determined to meet them with the same courage and perseverance. She thought of Daniel, not only as a mentor but as someone who had shaped her journey in subtle, profound ways. His guidance, patience, and trust had been a steady force, helping her navigate the trials of ranch life and discover her own strength. Emily's days at the ranch had taught her more than she could have imagined. She had learned that hard work, persistence, and patience were essential, but so were observation, understanding, and empathy. She had discovered the value of trust, not only in others but in herself. And most importantly, she had realized that growth often comes through struggle, through moments of doubt and challenge, and through the quiet determination to continue despite obstacles. As night fell over the ranch, Emily returned to the barn, tired but satisfied. She cared for the animals one last time, making sure they were safe and comfortable. She cleaned her tools, checked the fences, and prepared for the next day. The exhaustion in her body was profound, but it was accompanied by a sense of accomplishment and pride. She had faced difficulties, learned new skills, and proven to herself that she could endure more than she had ever imagined. Before going to sleep, Emily took a moment to reflect on the lessons of the day. Every challenge, every struggle, every moment of doubt had contributed to her growth. She felt a quiet determination, a readiness to face whatever the ranch and life might throw at her next. She had begun this journey seeking change, and she had found it, not just in her environment but in herself. The ranch had become more than a place of work. It had become a crucible for transformation, shaping Emily into someone stronger, wiser, and more resilient. And as she closed her eyes, listening to the sounds of the ranch settling into the night, Emily knew that she was ready. Ready for the next challenge, the next lesson, and the next step in this journey of growth, resilience, and self-discovery. She understood that life on the ranch would continue to test her, but she also knew that she had the strength, courage, and determination to meet every obstacle head-on, learning and growing with each passing day. The morning began like any other on the ranch, with a pale orange light spilling over the horizon. Emily rose early, the familiar ache in her muscles a reminder of her progress and effort. She had grown stronger, more confident, and more comfortable in this demanding life. Today, however, there was a tension in the air she couldn't ignore. The wind was stronger than usual, carrying the scent of rain and the distant rumble of thunder. It was a storm approaching, and Emily felt a flicker of unease in her chest. Daniel had already been out in the fields before sunrise, inspecting the fences and checking the cattle. He moved with quiet efficiency, every action precise, every gesture purposeful. Emily admired his calm in the face of nature's unpredictability, yet she knew this storm would be a real test, not just of her skills, but of her ability to stay calm under pressure. Daniel approached her with his usual quiet authority, giving her instructions for the day. "We need to secure the animals before the storm hits," he said. "I'll handle the northern fields. You take the southern herd. Stay focused and don't rush. Patience and care will keep everyone safe." Emily nodded, feeling a mixture of determination and anxiety. The southern herd was larger and included some of the younger, more unpredictable cattle. She knew the storm would agitate them, and any sudden panic could lead to injury or chaos. She took a deep breath, mentally preparing herself for the challenge. This was not just about work. It was about control, calm, and trust, both in herself and in the animals she had learned to care for. As she approached the herd, the wind began to pick up, rustling the grass and sending leaves swirling. The cattle were restless, shifting nervously on their hooves, lowing softly. Emily moved slowly, speaking in gentle tones, remembering Daniel's advice to guide them calmly, not with force. She walked among them, steadying her voice, her movements deliberate. A few of the younger calves seemed confused, stepping in different directions, but Emily remained composed, her heart pounding. She felt the intensity of the moment, knowing that one mistake could cause panic. Suddenly, a loud clap of thunder shook the sky, startling the herd. One of the calves bolted toward a weakened section of fence, and the panic quickly spread. Emily's stomach lurched as she realized the potential danger. She sprinted toward the calf, her boots slipping slightly in the wet grass, her hands outstretched to guide it. She called softly, trying to calm it, but the storm's noise made her voice nearly disappear. The calf stumbled, and Emily had to catch it before it hit the fence. She wrapped her arms around the trembling animal, feeling its rapid heartbeat against her own. "Steady," she whispered to herself, echoing the lessons Daniel had taught her. She guided the calf slowly back toward the herd, using her body as a barrier and her voice as a calming tool. Sweat mixed with rain on her forehead, and her clothes were soaked, but she refused to give in to fear. The rest of the herd had begun to scatter, and Emily realized she needed a plan to regroup them. She remembered Daniel's strategy for moving the cattle, positioning herself so that the animals moved calmly in the right direction, without feeling threatened. Emily took a deep breath and tried again, moving carefully among the herd, guiding them with patience and determination. Slowly, the animals began to respond to her calm presence. She led the calves back, one by one, and finally the larger cows began to follow. Each movement required precision and attention, and Emily felt every fiber of her being focused on the task. The storm raged around her, rain lashing against her skin, wind tugging at her hair, but she continued, refusing to give in to the chaos. Hours seemed to pass in a blur. Emily's muscles ached, her hands were raw from gripping ropes and equipment, and her body was soaked to the bone. Yet she did not stop. She kept repeating the mantra in her mind, "Hurt, but don't stop." Those words had become a guiding force for her, a reminder that perseverance was more important than fear or discomfort. Every step she took, every decision she made was a test of her strength and resilience. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Emily managed to guide the entire southern herd into a secure pen. The storm's intensity had not lessened, but the animals were safe, calm, and protected. Emily stood for a moment, breathing heavily, her heart pounding with exhaustion and relief. She looked around, seeing the rain-soaked fields, the wind-tossed trees, and the dark clouds overhead. Despite the chaos, she felt a profound sense of accomplishment. She had faced a challenge that had tested her skills, patience, and courage, and she had succeeded. Daniel appeared then, walking across the wet field with the same calm confidence he always carried. He had secured the northern herd and now approached Emily with a quiet smile. "You did well," he said simply. No elaborate praise, no unnecessary words, just acknowledgement that carried weight. Emily felt a surge of pride and relief. The storm had tested her in every way possible, but she had proven to herself that she could endure, act decisively, and succeed under pressure. As the rain continued to fall, Daniel and Emily walked back toward the ranch house together. There was a quiet understanding between them now, a bond formed through shared challenge and trust. Daniel's presence was steadying, a reminder that guidance and mentorship were as important as physical skill. Emily realized that his teachings were not just about ranch work. They were lessons about life, about facing adversity, and about trusting oneself even in the most difficult circumstances. That evening, after the storm had passed, Emily sat in the barn, drying her clothes and tending to the animals one last time. She reflected on the day's events, the fear and panic she had felt, and the calm determination that had carried her through. She thought about Daniel, about the way he had guided her, and about the lessons she had absorbed through experience rather than words. She understood that true growth came not from comfort or ease, but from facing challenges head-on and learning from them. The storm had left the ranch battered but intact. Broken branches littered the fields, puddles formed in low areas, and some fences had been damaged, but the animals were safe, and Emily had played a crucial role in that outcome. She realized that her perception of herself had shifted. She was no longer just a newcomer learning the ropes. She had become someone capable of handling unexpected crises, someone resilient, calm, and determined even under extreme pressure. As she cleaned up, Emily allowed herself a moment of quiet pride. She thought back to the early days, when lifting a bale of hay had exhausted her, and riding a horse had seemed impossible. Now she had faced a storm, calmed a panicked herd, and maintained control when chaos threatened to overwhelm her. She had grown stronger physically, mentally, and emotionally, and she knew that this growth was not the end. It was just another step in her journey. Later that night, Emily stood outside the ranch house, looking at the clear sky now filled with stars. The storm had passed, leaving a crisp freshness in the air and a sense of renewal across the land. She felt a deep connection to the ranch, to the animals, and to Daniel, who had shown her how to harness her inner strength and face challenges with courage. She understood that life on the ranch was more than work. It was a teacher, a test, and a path to self-discovery. As she prepared for sleep, Emily reflected on the mantra that had carried her through the storm: "Hurt, but don't stop." She realized it was more than a guiding phrase for physical labor. It was a principle for life. Pain, fear, and uncertainty were inevitable, but persistence, courage, and determination could overcome them. She felt a deep gratitude for the experiences she had faced, knowing they had shaped her into someone stronger, wiser, and more capable than she had ever been. The turning point of the storm marked a shift in Emily's journey. She was no longer a newcomer struggling to adjust. She was a part of the ranch, a contributor whose skills and courage were now trusted and respected. She had faced fear, acted decisively, and grown in ways she could not have anticipated. And she understood that future challenges, no matter how difficult, could be met with the same determination, patience, and calm strength that had guided her through today. That night, as Emily finally lay down to rest, she felt a profound sense of accomplishment and readiness. The storm had tested her limits, pushed her to her breaking point, and shown her that she was capable of more than she had ever imagined. She closed her eyes, listening to the quiet sounds of the ranch at night, the distant lowing of cattle, the rustling of trees in the gentle wind, and felt a deep connection to the land, the animals, and the life she was building. She knew that she had faced a turning point, and she was ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. Emily understood, more clearly than ever, that the lessons of the ranch were lessons for life. Strength, patience, courage, and persistence were not just necessary for surviving the storm. They were necessary for thriving in a world that would always present challenges. And in that understanding, Emily felt a quiet confidence. She had endured, she had grown, and she had proven to herself that she could face whatever came next with determination, resilience, and courage. After the storm had passed, the ranch seemed to breathe a quiet sigh of relief. The fields, still wet and glistening with puddles, looked refreshed, and the animals, calm and secure, grazed peacefully. Emily walked slowly among the cattle, checking for any signs of stress or injury. Her body ached from the long hours she had spent managing the herd, but there was a lightness in her steps, a feeling of accomplishment that she had never known before. She realized that the storm had been more than a challenge. It had been a turning point, a test of her courage, patience, and resilience. In the days following the storm, Emily noticed subtle changes within herself. She moved through her work with a confidence that had been absent before. Tasks that once seemed intimidating, like handling the younger horses or guiding a stubborn cow, now felt manageable. She could anticipate problems before they occurred and could act decisively without panic. Even when mistakes happened, she no longer berated herself for them. Instead, she treated each as a lesson, a way to improve her skills and understanding of the land and the animals. The transformation was quiet, almost imperceptible at first, but Emily could feel it in the way she carried herself and in the ease with which she managed her responsibilities. Daniel noticed these changes too. He began giving Emily more autonomy, assigning her tasks that required independent thinking and judgment. One morning, he asked her to lead a small group of new workers through a routine check of the northern fields. Emily felt a flutter of nervousness. She had never led others before, but she welcomed the opportunity. As she guided the newcomers, explaining the proper way to handle the horses and cattle, she felt a sense of pride and responsibility. The work flowed smoothly, and by the end of the day, Daniel's quiet nod of approval confirmed what Emily had begun to believe. She was capable, competent, and growing into a vital part of the ranch team. Her evenings became moments of reflection. After long days of physical work, Emily would sit on the porch of the ranch house, the fading sunlight painting the fields in golden hues. She watched the animals move through the pasture, the soft rustling of leaves in the wind, and the distant mountains standing tall against the sky. In these moments, she thought about the journey she had undertaken, from the uncertainty of her first days to the confidence she now carried. She realized that the ranch had given her more than physical strength. It had taught her patience, resilience, and the importance of trust in herself, in the land, and in the guidance of those around her. One afternoon, Emily encountered a challenge that tested not just her physical abilities but her judgment and empathy. A young foal had been born during the storm, and it struggled to stay on its feet. Its mother was protective and anxious, making it difficult for Emily to approach. She remembered Daniel's lessons on observing behavior, reading signals, and responding calmly. She watched the mother closely, noting when she could safely step closer. Speaking softly, moving slowly, Emily guided the foal to stand steadily, ensuring the mother remained calm. The process took hours, but when the foal finally stood and nursed, Emily felt a profound sense of accomplishment. She had not only applied her skills but had grown in understanding and empathy, recognizing that care required patience, observation, and respect for the natural instincts of the animals. Through these experiences, Emily began to reflect more deeply on her personal growth. She noticed how much her perspective on life had shifted. The city life she had left behind now seemed distant and trivial compared to the meaningful, tangible work she performed daily. She had learned the value of effort, the satisfaction of accomplishment, and the deep rewards that came from perseverance. Emily realized that life, much like ranch work, demanded patience and commitment. Success was not measured in speed or immediate results, but in the steady, thoughtful application of effort over time. Emily's relationship with Daniel evolved alongside her personal growth. Their interactions, once limited to instruction and observation, now carried a quiet depth. Daniel began sharing more stories from his own life, recounting the challenges he had faced on the ranch and the lessons he had learned from decades of experience. Emily listened intently, absorbing not only the practical knowledge, but also the wisdom that came from a life lived fully in connection with the land. She realized that mentorship was not just about teaching skills, it was about guidance, patience, and trust. Daniel's faith in her abilities gave her the courage to take risks, make decisions, and grow beyond what she had imagined possible. One evening, as the sun dipped low behind the hills, Daniel invited Emily to join him on a ride across the fields. They moved slowly, the horses' hooves stirring soft clouds of dust. The ranch stretched out before them, vast and alive, a world Emily now understood in ways she had never before. As they rode, Daniel spoke quietly, pointing out subtle signs in the behavior of the animals, the shifting patterns of the wind, and the changes in the land. Emily absorbed every word, feeling a growing connection not only to the ranch, but to the wisdom of experience and observation. She realized that growth required more than action. It required awareness, attentiveness, and a willingness to learn from the world around her. Emily began taking initiative in other areas of the ranch as well. She repaired fences without waiting for instruction, guided new workers, and cared for animals with a level of skill and confidence that had once seemed impossible. The staff began to notice her capabilities, approaching her for advice or assistance. Emily felt a quiet pride in her growing role, understanding that her journey had moved beyond mere survival or adaptation. She was now contributing meaningfully to the life and success of the ranch. Despite her progress, Emily remained humble. She understood that growth was ongoing, that challenges would continue to arise, and that patience and persistence were essential. She embraced the idea that failure was a teacher, and every mistake offered a lesson to be learned. This mindset allowed her to approach each day with a sense of curiosity and determination, rather than fear or frustration. Emily discovered that the most significant growth often occurred during difficult moments, when perseverance and reflection combined to create lasting change. As the weeks passed, Emily's confidence deepened. She no longer doubted her ability to handle the demands of ranch life. She could face long days, unpredictable weather, and unexpected challenges with a calm determination that surprised even herself. She had learned to balance caution with decisiveness, patience with action, and observation with intuition. The mantra she had carried since the early days, "Hurt, but don't stop," had transformed from a reminder of physical endurance into a guiding principle for life itself. It reminded her that growth required courage, persistence, and the willingness to face discomfort without fear. Emily's reflections extended beyond the practical skills she had acquired. She thought about the emotional and mental changes she had undergone. She had learned to trust herself, to recognize her own capabilities, and to embrace challenges as opportunities rather than obstacles. The sense of accomplishment she felt was no longer tied to individual tasks, but to the overall journey of transformation she had undertaken. She realized that strength was not simply physical, it was emotional, mental, and spiritual, shaped through experience, reflection, and perseverance. One day, Emily found herself teaching a new worker how to manage the cattle. As she guided the young assistant through the tasks, she felt a profound sense of satisfaction. She had come a long way from the uncertain newcomer who had struggled with basic chores. Her knowledge, patience, and confidence allowed her to mentor others effectively. The process reinforced her understanding that growth was not only about personal achievement, but also about sharing knowledge, fostering trust, and supporting others in their own journeys. The ranch, once an intimidating and overwhelming place, had become a source of inspiration, learning, and fulfillment. Emily saw it not just as a workplace but as a teacher, offering endless lessons through its demands, challenges, and beauty. She began to appreciate the interconnectedness of all aspects of life on the ranch, the land, the animals, the weather, and the people. Each element required attention, care, and respect. Emily realized that living fully required awareness, engagement, and responsibility, lessons that extended far beyond the boundaries of the ranch. Evenings became moments of quiet contemplation. Emily would sit on the porch, watching the sun set behind the hills, listening to the gentle sounds of the animals settling in for the night. She thought about how much she had grown since arriving at the ranch, the strength she had built, the skills she had acquired, and the lessons she had learned. She understood that she was not the same person who had first arrived, uncertain and timid. She was now confident, capable, and aware of her own resilience. Emily also recognized the subtle, yet profound, impact of Daniel's mentorship. His guidance had helped her navigate challenges, build confidence, and trust her own instincts. He had modeled patience, strength, and wisdom, and Emily had absorbed these qualities, integrating them into her own approach to life and work. She realized that mentorship was a gift, a way to grow not only through instruction but through observation, reflection, and shared experience. As Emily prepared for the next day, she felt a sense of readiness and anticipation. She knew that the journey of growth was ongoing and that challenges would continue to arise. Yet she also understood that she now possessed the tools, strength, patience, skill, and insight to meet whatever came her way. The ranch had shaped her, tested her, and guided her, leaving a lasting impact on her body, mind, and spirit. Emily's reflections in Part 4 revealed that true growth was not just about completing tasks or overcoming physical challenges. It was about self-discovery, resilience, and the development of character. She had learned to trust herself, face fear with courage, and embrace challenges as opportunities. Through her experiences on the ranch, she had become stronger, wiser, and more aware of her own potential. She understood that the lessons she had learned would continue to guide her, not only in ranch life but in all aspects of her future. The weeks and months that followed the storm felt different to Emily. She woke up each morning with a sense of purpose and belonging, a feeling she had never truly experienced in her city life. The ranch had become more than a workplace. It was a world where she had grown, learned, and discovered her own strength. Her body was strong, her mind sharp, and her spirit resilient. The physical exhaustion that had once weighed her down now felt like a badge of honor, a testament to the hard work she had done and the obstacles she had overcome. Daniel, as always, moved through the ranch with calm efficiency, but now Emily felt a sense of partnership between them. He trusted her judgment, often assigning her responsibilities without hesitation, confident that she would handle them with care and skill. Emily realized that she had become someone he relied on, someone capable of thinking critically, acting decisively, and managing unexpected challenges. It was a realization that filled her with quiet pride, a sense of accomplishment that went beyond the physical work she performed daily. One morning, Emily was tasked with preparing the herd for transport to a nearby field for fresh grazing. It was a job that required planning, attention to detail, and patience. As she walked among the animals, checking their health and behavior, she felt a deep connection to them. She had learned to read their signals, anticipate their reactions, and move with calm authority. Even the younger, more unpredictable animals now responded to her guidance, reflecting the growth and experience she had accumulated over her time on the ranch. The work was challenging, as always, but Emily approached it with confidence and focus. She guided the cattle through narrow passages, ensuring they stayed calm and safe. At one point, a young calf wandered off, frightened by a sudden noise. Emily's heart raced for a moment, but she quickly recalled the lessons she had learned, the importance of patience, calmness, and steady guidance. She moved slowly, speaking softly, and managed to guide the calf back to the herd. The sense of pride and satisfaction that washed over her was profound. She realized that she no longer feared challenges. Instead, she welcomed them as opportunities to apply what she had learned and to continue growing. As the day progressed, Emily reflected on her journey from the first day she had arrived at the ranch. She remembered her uncertainty, her doubts, and her physical struggles. She had stumbled, fallen, and felt overwhelmed, yet she had never given up. Every obstacle had been a lesson, every failure an opportunity to learn. The transformation she had undergone was more than physical, it was emotional, mental, and spiritual. She had learned resilience, patience, and courage, and she had discovered a sense of self-reliance that she had never known before. Her connection with Daniel had also evolved. The initial mentor-student dynamic had grown into mutual respect and understanding. Daniel recognized Emily's capabilities and trusted her judgment, while Emily valued his guidance and wisdom. They shared moments of quiet conversation, often reflecting on the challenges of ranch life and the lessons learned through experience. Emily realized that mentorship was not only about teaching skills, but also about fostering confidence, resilience, and trust. Daniel's steady presence had shaped her journey in ways that went far beyond the practical knowledge of ranch work. One afternoon, Emily found herself reflecting on the broader meaning of her experiences. She understood that the lessons of the ranch applied not only to physical labor, but to life itself. She had learned to face fear, overcome obstacles, and trust her abilities. She had discovered the value of patience, observation, and thoughtful action. Most importantly, she had realized that growth required persistence, courage, and the willingness to endure discomfort in pursuit of a greater goal. These insights, she knew, would remain with her long after she left the ranch. Emily also began to see the impact of her growth on others. The new workers she guided now looked to her for advice and instruction, trusting her judgment and respecting her experience. She felt a sense of responsibility and pride in helping them navigate the challenges she had once faced. This role reinforced her own growth, reminding her that knowledge and experience were not only personal achievements, but also gifts to be shared. She had come to understand that strength was not only measured by individual capability, but also by the ability to support and guide others. As the weeks continued, Emily took on more complex tasks with confidence. She repaired fences, managed feeding schedules, and oversaw the care of the livestock with precision and care. Each day brought new challenges, yet she approached them with determination and calm. Even when the unexpected occurred, a sudden injury to an animal, a change in weather, or a logistical complication, Emily handled it with skill and confidence. She had become someone who could face uncertainty with composure, someone capable of making decisions that balanced practicality, empathy, and foresight. Evenings on the ranch had become moments of quiet reflection and satisfaction. Emily often sat on the porch of the ranch house, watching the sun set over the fields and mountains. The land seemed alive, vibrant, and full of lessons for those willing to observe and learn. Emily felt a deep sense of connection to the ranch, to the animals, and to the life she had built. She realized that her journey had been about more than mastering ranch work. It had been about discovering her own strength, resilience, and capacity for growth. One evening, Daniel joined her on the porch. They watched in silence as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the fields in warm, golden light. "You've come a long way," he said quietly. Emily felt a warmth in her chest at his words, recognizing the depth of trust and respect they now shared. She realized that she had not only learned skills and resilience, but had also gained a mentor who believed in her abilities, someone whose guidance had helped her navigate challenges and grow in confidence. Emily's thoughts often turned to the first days she had arrived at the ranch, the uncertainty, the exhaustion, and the fear of failure. She had doubted herself constantly, wondering if she was capable of handling the physical demands and emotional challenges of ranch life. Yet through perseverance, reflection, and guidance, she had transformed. She was no longer the uncertain newcomer. She was confident, skilled, and resilient. Her journey had taught her that growth was not linear, that challenges were opportunities, and that persistence and courage could overcome even the most daunting obstacles. One morning, Emily stood on a hill overlooking the ranch, the sunrise painting the sky in brilliant shades of pink and gold. She watched as the cattle grazed peacefully, the fields stretching endlessly before her. A sense of calm and fulfillment washed over her. She realized that she had grown not only in skill but in character. She had learned patience, resilience, and empathy. She had discovered a strength within herself that she had never known existed. And she understood that the lessons of the ranch would stay with her, guiding her in all aspects of life. The ranch had marked her in ways that went far beyond physical labor. Every challenge she had faced, every moment of doubt and fear, and every success she had achieved had shaped her into someone stronger, wiser, and more aware. She felt a profound sense of gratitude for the land, the animals, the challenges, and most of all, for the mentorship and guidance that had helped her grow. Emily realized that true growth was not measured by ease or comfort, but by the ability to face challenges, endure hardship, and emerge stronger and more capable. As the weeks turned into months, Emily became a respected and integral part of the ranch. Her skills, judgment, and calm presence were relied upon in every aspect of daily life. She guided new workers, tended to the animals with care, and managed complex tasks with precision and confidence. She had transformed from a tentative newcomer into someone capable of facing any challenge with determination and resilience. Her journey had not been easy, but it had been profoundly rewarding, shaping her body, mind, and spirit. Even in quiet moments, Emily reflected on the journey she had undertaken. She remembered the exhaustion, the fear, and the doubts of her first days. She thought of the storm that had tested her courage, the lessons Daniel had imparted, and the growth that had come from persistence and reflection. She understood that her experiences on the ranch had given her not only practical skills, but also insights into her own resilience, strength, and capacity for growth. In the evenings, Emily would often walk among the animals, feeling a deep connection to them and to the land. She realized that her journey had been about more than mastering ranch work. It had been about discovering herself, her strengths, and her potential. The ranch had tested her, challenged her, and ultimately transformed her. She had learned to face adversity with courage, to trust her instincts, and to persevere even when the path was difficult. As she prepared for sleep each night, Emily felt a profound sense of fulfillment. She had grown in ways she had never imagined, learning not only skills and resilience but also patience, empathy, and the ability to trust herself. She knew that the lessons she had learned would continue to guide her throughout her life. The ranch had become a place of transformation, a world that had tested her limits and revealed her true strength. Emily understood that life, like the ranch, was full of challenges and opportunities. She had learned that growth required courage, persistence, and a willingness to endure hardship. She had discovered the value of patience, observation, and thoughtful action. And she had realized that true transformation comes not from avoiding difficulties, but from facing them, learning from them, and emerging stronger and wiser. Looking out over the ranch, Emily felt a deep sense of peace and gratitude. She had arrived uncertain, exhausted, and untested, yet she was leaving, or rather, living now, with confidence, skill, and resilience. The land, the animals, the work, and the mentorship she had received had marked her deeply, shaping her into someone capable, strong, and aware. She knew that this journey would stay with her forever, leaving an indelible mark on her spirit. As she finally settled into bed, the sounds of the ranch settling for the night around her, Emily reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She understood that her growth was not just about surviving or completing tasks. It was about transformation, self-discovery, and resilience. She had faced fear, endured hardship, and emerged stronger. The ranch had taught her lessons that went far beyond work, leaving a lasting impact on her mind, body, and soul. Emily closed her eyes with a quiet smile, feeling ready for whatever the future held. She had grown, learned, and transformed. She had discovered strength she had never known, courage to face challenges, and wisdom to guide her path. The ranch had tested her limits, shaped her character, and left an indelible mark on her spirit. She knew that her journey was far from over, but she also knew that she was ready, capable, and resilient. And in that realization, she felt a deep sense of fulfillment, peace, and readiness to embrace the life she had built and the person she had become.